Mera naam Daniel Brooks Hai, ek small-town prosecutor or ek Kota SA family farm ka malik. Sol ba ki menet ke bad wheat field. I ran toward the field and froze. My entire wheat farm was engulfed in flames. Firefighters fought the blaze, but by the time they got it under control, nearly 80% of my crop was gone. Neighbors said someone had started a controlled burn. And right away, my suspicion pointed at one person, the HOA president, Linda Carver. Linda had always complained about my farm. According to her, my wheat field ruined the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. Just a week earlier, she had sent me a final warning letter: cut it down or we will take action. Now I knew exactly what her action meant. Police opened an investigation the next morning. A security camera showed an SUV parked near my fence the night before, the same make and model Linda drove. A witness also reported seeing someone spraying something along my property line. But there still wasn't enough direct evidence. Because I was personally involved, the county assigned an independent prosecutor. Still, investigators kept me updated. It wasn't just a case anymore. Someone had destroyed my family's, then they found the breakthrough. Inside the HOA storage shed were several cans of fire accelerant, with Linda's fingerprints on them. HOA board members later admitted she had pushed for an emergency meeting the night before the fire, saying, "We need to get rid of that wheat field." Livelihood. Exactly 1 week later, my courtroom day arrived. I wasn't sitting at the prosecutor's desk this time. I sat as the victim. When the courtroom doors opened, Linda walked in wearing handcuffs. The confidence she always carried was gone. Her face was pale with fear. The prosecutor laid out the charges: property destruction, reckless endangerment, and environmental violation. I didn't say a single word, but every detail reminded me of how nearly a year of hard work had turned to ashes. Linda's defense didn't stand a chance. After reviewing the evidence, the judge delivered the verdict swiftly: full restitution for damages, mandatory community service, and immediate removal from her HOA presidency. The courtroom fell silent as I walked out of the courthouse. The smell of smoke still lingered in my memory, but it wasn't from my field anymore. It was the smell of arrogance burned down by justice. In just 1 week, everything had changed. After the verdict, reporters crowded outside the courthouse. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed forward, and everyone wanted to know one thing: why would an HOA president burn a farm? I kept my response simple: some things are bigger than HOA rules. Like people's livelihoods. But the story didn't end in court. The county's agricultural inspector visited my property the next morning. He examined the burnt soil, touched the blackened earth, and explained that full recovery could take months. Hearing that hurt more than the fire itself, and why neighbors stepped up immediately. Within 2 days, 5 families volunteered to help clear the burned debris. They brought tractors, tools, and even food for the workers. For the first time in a while, the neighborhood felt united, ironically because of an HOA disaster. Meanwhile, the HOA board removed Linda's nameplate, cleaned out her office, and discovered stacks of aggressive violation notices she never mailed, threats she kept for herself, not the community. It was clear she had turned the HOA into her personal power game. As investigators continued reviewing the case, they uncovered more. Linda had used HOA funds to buy the accelerants she used for the fire. That meant another charge: misuse of association resources. The HOA members were furious. They had unknowingly paid for the fire that destroyed my field. 1 week later, the new acting HOA president, Mark Sanders, visited my farm personally. He apologized on behalf of the entire association and handed me a letter stating, "Your farm was never in violation. The HOA's actions were unauthorized and illegal." It didn't fix the damage, but it mattered. The county offered a small recovery grant for agricultural disasters. With that money and the community's help, we began restoring the field. Every day felt like rebuilding a piece of my family's history. The ground was still scarred, but hope was growing. Consequences of her choices. This time, I didn't feel anger, just closure. She wasn't a powerful HOA president anymore. She was just a person who thought she was above the law and learned the hard way she wasn't. As winter approached, new wheat seedlings began to sprout. Small green blades pushed through the darkened soil, a subtle reminder that destruction isn't the end, it's the beginning of something new. Every new sprout felt like justice growing back. The night I saw the first patch of green across the field, I realized something important. This wasn't a story about an HOA war. It was a story about resilience, about community, truth, and the simple belief that the right thing eventually wins. And as I looked at the regrowing field, I knew this new season would be stronger than the last. By early spring, the field looked alive again. The first strong waves of wheat swayed gently in the wind. I stood at the edge of the farm one morning, watching sunlight stretch across the new growth. It felt symbolic, not just a field recovering, but my entire year. People in the neighborhood started walking by more often, stopping to talk, asking for updates, or just offering a friendly check-in. Even families who never talked to me before were suddenly invested in my farm's progress. The HOA's downfall had strangely brought the whole neighborhood closer. The new HOA board, under Mark Sanders, began rewriting the entire HOA rulebook. Dozens of outdated, petty, and unreasonable rules were removed. For the first time, residents felt like they had a voice. Mark repeatedly said, "This won't be Linda's HOA ever again." Meanwhile, Linda's case kept expanding. Investigators found she had been issuing fake, anonymous complaints to residents just to justify fines. Several neighbors came forward with similar stories. What started as my wheat field fire had now exposed years of her misuse of power. I was called back to court as a witness in one of the follow-up hearings. This time, instead of nerves, I felt calm. Linda avoided the courthouse steps. An older lady named Mrs. Kent approached me. She said Linda had threatened her in the past for planting flowers that were too bright. She hugged me and whispered, "You exposed the truth for all of us." "Thank you." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded and tacked the entire time. Her attorney tried to argue that she meant well for the community, but the judge wasn't buying the courthouse steps. An older lady named Mrs. Kent approached me. She said Linda had threatened her in the past for planting flowers that were too bright. She hugged me and whispered, "You exposed the truth for all of us." "Thank you." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. Back home, I installed a new security system around the farm. Not because I feared another attack, but because I wanted peace of mind. The cameras stood tall, silently guarding the place where everything had gone wrong, and slowly gone right again. As the wheat grew taller, my family visited more often. My father ran his hands through the new stalks. "Your grandfather would have been proud," he said softly. My mom wiped a tear, remembering how much history this farm held. One afternoon, a storm rolled in with heavy winds. For a moment, I panicked. The fire trauma hadn't fully left me. I rushed outside, half expecting flames again. But all I saw was rain washing over new life. The storm didn't destroy the field, it fed it. Paragraph 30. The new HOA board issued an official public notice clearing my farm of all past violations. They even organized a neighborhood barbecue to celebrate the community's fresh start. I wasn't much of a party person, but I showed up out of respect. At the barbecue, people shared stories about how the HOA used to intimidate them. Mark promised transparent leadership from now on, and he made one final announcement. The HOA would help fund local farms, starting with mine. The crowd cheered. By summer, my new wheat field was ready for harvest. But this time, I wasn't standing alone. Nearly a dozen as we loaded the final wagons, I looked around at everyone helping. Folks who had lived only blocks away but never connected until disaster forced unity. I realized the fire burned my field, but it also burned away barriers between people. Boers volunteered to help. The field echoed with laughter, tractor engines, and people working together as if it were a shared victory.
Finally, the judge delivered the sentence. A year of probation, 300 hours of mandatory community service, full financial restitution, and a permanent ban from serving on any HOA board. The courtroom exhaled collectively. Justice had finished its course. That a woman sitting behind me whispered, "I never thought the day would come." Someone else quietly clapped. The judge didn't stop the reaction. He knew this community had endured far too much under Linda's leadership. Paragraph 45. After court ended, I stepped outside and breathed in deeply. The air felt lighter, as if the entire neighborhood had been carrying a weight that was finally lifted. One by one, neighbors walked up to me, thanking me for standing up when they were too afraid to. When I got back to the farm, I found a small basket left on my porch. Fresh bread, jars of homemade jam, and a note for the man who protected his farm and helped protect us all. It wasn't signed, but I didn't need a name. The gesture said everything that days passed. The farm became a place where neighbors gathered more often. Kids ran between rows of wheat. Older folks brought lemonade, and evenings were filled with laughter. It was strange. The fire had taken so much, yet somehow given the community a reason to reconnect. I started planning a small outdoor festival for the next harvest season. Mark and a new HOA board volunteered to help organize it. The idea was simple: celebrate growth, resilience, and unity, something the neighborhood hadn't done in years. On a quiet Sunday morning, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the wind roll across the field. The same field that once burned now shimmered with life. Every golden wave of wheat reminded me that healing is never instant, but it always comes. Looking at my farm, my community, and the future we were building, I realized one truth. Sometimes the worst moments in life break open the path to something better. The fire could have ended everything, but instead, it begged. Neighbors continued dropping by unannounced. Some brought pies, some brought tools, and some just came to talk. It wasn't something I was used to. I'd always been the quiet type. But the fire had opened doors I didn't know existed. One evening, I found a new HOA board gathered near my gate. They weren't there for trouble. They were there to help install new community signage. Mark waved and said, "This is our way of closing the old chapter." The sign read, "Welcome to Maple Ridge, a community that stands together." Later that week, the county released the final investigation report. The community read it like a book, confirming everything: the accelerants, the misuse of HOA funds, and Linda's intentional involvement. The truth was now public record, leaving no room for rumors. Most people expected Linda to leave town, but she didn't. She remained in her small townhouse, serving her probation. Every day, she was assigned cleanup duty around the community. Seeing her picking up trash on the sidewalks she once ruled with fear felt like a strange kind of symmetry. Surprisingly, no one harassed her. People kept their distance, but they didn't throw insults or mock her. The community was healing, and healing rarely needs revenge. As the new harvest festival approached, kids practiced for the small parade. They made little cardboard tractors and paper wheat stalks. Parents helped design banners that read, "Resilience grows here." The community hadn't looked so lively in years. On the morning of the festival, I woke up early, brewed a pot of coffee, and sat outside watching the sunrise paint the field in amber light. I never imagined my farm would become the center of something so hopeful. When I reached the festival grounds, the place was already buzzing. Food stalls lined the sidewalk, handmade crafts hung from wooden booths, and families filled the park with laughter. The new HOA board had outdone themselves. It looked like a small-town fair straight out of a movie. Mark approached me with a grin. "Daniel, you're the honorary marshal today." Before I could respond, two kids handed me a sash that said Community Protector. I laughed, embarrassed, but wore it anyway. Paragraph 61. During the ceremony, the mayor called me up to speak. Public speaking wasn't my strength, but I kept it simple. I didn't rebuild this field alone. We rebuilt it together. The crowd applauded, not for me, but for what we all went through. Later in the afternoon, I spotted Linda standing far behind the crowd, quietly observing. She wasn't participating, just watching. For a moment, our eyes met. She looked away quickly, but something told me she understood the weight of her choices. Night fell. Lanterns lit up the festival. People danced, kids played, and the air smelled of barbecue and fresh bread. It was the kind of night that reminded you why communities mattered. After the festival ended, a few neighbors stayed behind to help clean up. I worked beside them, stacking chairs, folding tents, and packing decorations. It felt good, like being part of a family I never realized I had. Walking home, the sound of crickets echoed through the cool night. The moon cast a soft glow across the field, and the rows of wheat looked like waves frozen in time. I paused and took in a moment, letting it sink into my memory. Over the next weeks, life settled into a new normal. The HOA became more transparent. The neighborhood became more united, and the tension that once filled the community slowly disappeared. People talked more openly. And listen more, 2.1 crisp morning, Mark stopped by with paperwork for the upcoming HOA elections. "We'd love for you to join the board," he said. I chuckled and shook my head. "I'm a prosecutor and a farmer. That's enough trouble for me." He laughed and agreed.